Hey, this is the Love Channel. Hi, everybody. All right, I'm going to do just a really brief introduction here and maybe a little bit about why we're all on this screen together. My name's Christine. The six of us, is that right? Seven of us? Can I count today? The seven of us. Wow, the seven of us. Has started an interesting conversation. Each of us has done some recording together. We've been sharing pieces of a puzzle, the story. It has to do with our Earth. It has to do with the awakening of humanity. It has to do with the time in which we are currently embodied and who we are discovering, who we are, and why we're here. So with that, I'll just leave it to everybody to sort of do a little brief introduction. Niels, why don't we start with you? And then we'll just go into the one other thing. This is very free form. We didn't plan anything today, other than one piece that Shane and I are going to read, and that's it. So we're in an experimental process here right now to see what can emerge from this beautiful field of folks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Niels. I guess primarily I'm a writer and a big picture thinker. As I understand it, we're looking into the origins of evil today. The original trauma that has kind of set humanity on a certain course. And I'm just here to try and gather ideas, concepts, insights for actually a novel that I'm rewriting that has to do with all this wonderful stuff involving Lucifer and Tiamat and the whole original trauma and the construction of our universe and the bureaucracy that supposedly runs it.
Thanks, Niels. Trudy, hi. Nice to meet you. We haven't spoken but a few minutes, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Trudy Wade. I live in Canada. I live about 4 hours away from Niels. And I'm here today to just share a little bit of my inner knowing and to learn and to grow, expand, and bring it all to the table here with everybody else. And I think this is an amazing way that we can all help one another and continue to go on.
Thank you. All right, Lily, you barely need an introduction, but go for it.
I'm Lily Kolasova. I'm just sharing my own personal path, my own personal experience. And so looking into trauma for myself is why I'm here, because all I can offer is my own experience and my own intuition. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Lori, hi.
Hello. I'm Lori, Spirit Wind on the EE Forum. I've gotten to know Claudia and Christine over the last year, and we've been discussing all of these topics. I think we all want to kind of get back to the origin of whatever it is that seems to play out along different points in the timeline. And trauma does play into it. So I'm here to just, like Lily, my intuition and, you know, what comes to me. I just recently posted an article on EE about how we carry memories through our DNA. And so I don't know if some of what I picked up is actually, you know, through the bloodline or things I've actually experienced, but more and more I'm seeing more images of, you know, the past and what needs to be healed. And so I'm just really excited to be here today. I live up in Elk, Washington. Probably nobody's ever heard of it. And just looking forward to see where the conversation goes today.
Thank you, Lori. And Shane, hi. How are you today, darling?
I am wonderful. My name is Shane. I wrote the Ruiner blog and I play the character of the same name. I also run the podcast for The Whole World Laughing. I'm here today to join with this lovely group and discuss whatever we're hiding back in our psyche back there. We need to pull that forward, and hopefully getting some dialogue started will help us all do that collectively.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you. And Claudia.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia and I post on the EE forum as Corelia. At some point when I looked at humanity as a whole, I noticed a pattern of trauma which essentially starts before birth and possibly doesn't end until death, which is very often these days a ritual. So I got very curious figuring out where this trauma originates, because as far as I can see, it may be a condition now, but not the nature.
Thank you, Claudia. Just to bounce right off of that, this is one of the misconceptions I have found myself in my own explorations, is that we tend to think of humanity as traumatic experience. We think of ourselves as suffering from evil, or even that humanity itself is evil. The deeper and deeper I go into my own psyche and my own shadow work that I've been so propelled into. I mean, sometimes these aren't even choices it seems like we make, but our life circumstances propel us into darker aspects of the realm in which we're inhabiting. The deeper I get, the more certain I become that this is not our base nature. This was not the intended base nature for this planet, for this part of the universe, that something happened. And that's what I would like to explore today with everyone here. About, I don't know, Shane, maybe you can correct me, but it seems about maybe 3-4 months ago, just in conversations and exploring that, Tiamat came up quite up into my psyche anyways. Like, I hadn't really looked even at the legends, or what you want to call the mythology. I don't even know what to call all the cylinder seals from Sumer, from that culture, which includes, of course, Anu, Enki, and Enlil, and all of the gods and goddesses that were on the earth at that time. But it triggered something in me, and it triggered a deep, deep memory in me, and a deep it's a deep pain body. I don't know really, really how else to describe it. And maybe that would be our jump off point today. And what I'm finding, and I think we probably all agree, is that when something starts to surface in the consciousness, like it might surface at first in 1 or 2 or who knows how many, but it's very quick that it catches into this collaborative mind. It's like we all start to see something independently. And it's always a bit of a surprise to me when I'll come with something that I'm understanding or pulling out, that other people are going through a very similar experience. So it does feel like a wave of information. It does feel like something's moving through us. It's moving through our bodies. It's moving through our psyches. And this seems to be the big one right now, is the baseline trauma. Yeah, it really does. And I don't know if I would say much more. I want to hear more. And Shane, whenever you're ready, if we want to just pick the moment to read, because Shane sent me something he wrote, and spontaneously I found a line between each of his lines. And it seemed to start to fill in the story a little bit more, because I feel ultimately each of us is a piece of this story. We are each a piece of the wholeness, and by bringing it together, we're going to be able to finally really heal this rift.
I think that something happened in our past. We can all identify that some massive event happened that changed things, depending on which route of research you want to take down. You could call that a flood. You could call it a comet hitting the Earth. You could call it the destruction of a planet. There's many different kind of viewpoints on what it may have been, but I think we can all agree something happened. So I think the kind of goal here is to try and identify what we all kind of identify it as being. Because we're all going to have, I think, different interpretations of it. Perhaps there's different events that occurred, or perhaps it was a series of events, or a period of time in which many different events occurred that have caused this. So I think that there would be no right or wrong here, and just kind of discussing what it could be as potentials or possibilities, as opposed to trying to put a pin in it and say, this is exactly what it is, and we know that that's exactly what it is, because I think that it is going to take us some time to properly identify what it was that caused this in us.
So if it's okay with you, Shane, maybe we should just go ahead and read. We've been meaning to do this for quite a while, because I hadn't reread what we wrote for months now, and it pretty much touches on each of the things that you just brought up. Was it one event, a series of events? Definitely it's about a trauma, something that we've sort of experimented with, unexpected trauma, something that we've even seen in a way that wasn't really supposed to happen even, which is really strange to say in the context. But if that's okay with everybody, we can go from there and then just see what that sparks in each of us.
I will have to shut off my camera because I'm working off my phone, so I have to
Okay.
open it up.
Okay. That's okay. I'm just like I'm sitting here looking at the lines on this piece of paper in front of me, and I while you're doing that, Shane, I just want to say that these are they're like memories that come up, and Lori so properly said, I believe in our DNA, in all of that. We have all the memory. We are the memory. It's all there for us. So, one of the things that I feel for myself is when something touches me internally, it's like it impacts me in some way, so that something changes in my vibratory field, my feeling body gets triggered. This is what I'm looking at as I'm reading these pieces. And the first line is yours, Shane.
Okay, well, I'll begin, preface this a little bit. This is kind of like a poem or a stream of consciousness I had written after contemplating the subject and having some conversations with some friends on the potential of Tiamat. So I'll begin now. Tiamat was beautiful.
Venus is her star name.
Everything was ancient and balanced.
All was radiant love, the outshining of light and matter.
All visitors were welcomed and laws of the land respected.
Above all, honor and trust were maintained.
Perhaps she was simply in the way.
Perhaps she knew the grand play and put herself in the way.
A terrible war was raging on both sides of the solar system. Both sides were desperately trying to gain the upper hand. This is when a horrible threat was made.
The Predator had made great inroads and arrived in Tiamat's solar realm.
The threat was the destruction of Tiamat.
She knew, and of due course prepared.
This threat was prepared for. The loaded gun pointed in Tiamat's direction.
A last attempt was made. The many gathered for a peaceful resolution.
A hair trigger with a finger resting upon it until someone pushed the finger a little too hard.
A betrayal, an arrogance, rained destruction not seen before.
So much was lost that day. A beautiful shrine of tribute to organic creation was destroyed.
The immensity of the pain fused into all organic matter. So great was her destruction, the template of her beauty shattered.
Ripped apart from the inside out, the waters fell and the land spiraled onwards, outwards in all direction.
Ripped from a continuum of time and space, a great rift formed in this quadrant of the universe. The music stopped.
The salt water of Tiamat fell and mixed with the fresh water of another planet, what we now know as Earth.
In this moment, great dragons of chaos formed. Spiraling plasma fields ripped from her core.
Following the water was a large piece of Tiamat, falling and becoming a piece of this earth.
Deep impact on a budding sister world, shaking her with such violence that she too knew the trauma to her core.
Other pieces flung and fell elsewhere, much less gracefully, crashing into planets and moons and flying outwards to be reformed, the most dense collections of debris forming in a belt in orbit near where Tiamat once belonged.
The iron bracelet formed to prevent the ripple of trauma to reach even further realms.
It is not common for the destruction of planets to occur in such a way. This was the equivalent of murder. This occurrence sent ripples across the universe and attracted a great deal of attention.
When the music of an omniverse is torn asunder, all knew.
Several beings jumped to action, working throughout the solar system to preserve life forms and stabilize natural grids before reforming damaged celestial bodies insofar as was possible.
Great plasma jets reached out, the great sky dragons of ancient lore.
Much of the attention fell on our planet.
We are all here now, the Watchers and the Awakened.
Earth was assisted by various species and souls and brought back into natural balance. This creation was beautiful and left to grow.
What came with Tiamat was an intruder species. It waited and worked in the shadows.
Survivors witnessed the arrival of refugees of all of the worlds and satellites, as well as Tiamat, to this recently reset planet.
From our slumber, we wake. The time of the return is now.
This is where history as we know it begins.
This is where our history ends and life begins.
That is the end.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just that. Oh, so much pain.
When looking at all of this stuff, these ancient myths, and this would go back at least 20 years for me, I've always had this feeling of inevitability, that it had to be this way, that we had to go through this trauma, that this was something that the universe needed. And if you don't mind, I'd like to actually read that little intro that I had written and then kind of explain the context of where that's coming from.
Please do. Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Here we go. Here it is. I found it. So I titled it The Origin or Necessity of Evil. And here it is. Imagine a universe overlaid with a system, one so grand and meticulous that seemingly every contingency has been accounted for. For every experience that comes up, for any creature anywhere in the universe at all, there is a procedure, a singular, predetermined response, universally deemed appropriate. Every situation is perfectly governed. Evolution follows a rigid, time-worn, tested path. There are no deviations. There are no deviants. There are no surprises. All conclusions are foregone long ago. Not only is the end certainly known, but equally known is the only means of how to get there. But what happens when a true creator is birthed into such a universe? What then? With the freedom to create, there arises deviation, and all the preconceived contingencies of the system suddenly fall short. They cannot deal with the unforeseen. Deviants arise in self-determination because there is one who resides deep within who asks always, what lies beyond your perfect system? And then proceeds to give the answer, I do. The I do there is a restatement of the totality of the I am which contains all potential for existence, the infinite I am. And that what I was looking at was that the old universal order before the trauma may have been a perfect system, but the infinite I am of a true creator cannot be ever contained or fully expressed in any system, no matter how perfect. So something has to come along to say, we need to go beyond the system. And I was thinking that the universe, say, as described in a revelation like the Urantia book, that it's this very, very meticulous system where everything is very specifically governed. In such a universe, everything is delegated, so that there was perhaps a time when there was no singular creature that had full creational capacity, that creation was something that was spread amongst certain beings, were the creator beings, and then the maintenance of that creation was then delegated to other beings, that the whole of creation was a very large collaborative thing that was governed by a very elaborate system. And I'm trying to figure out where I'm trying to go with this here. That elaborate system, at some point, well, I guess I'm gonna draw on Tom Clearwater's latest video that he just put out, where he describes scalar humans as being the introduction of the singular creature that has all of creational ability invested in the singular creature. If we take that as a new development in the universe, whenever humans were created, sometime around the time of the original trauma, that we as these creational beings, it's incumbent upon us to basically go beyond the system and take on the mantle of creator and create beyond systems in a sort of creation that's only in the moment, in terms of we make it up as we go along, kind of like what's happening right here. We just make it up as we go along. There is no system to follow. There is no procedure to follow. And that's kind of what we're stepping into. But in order to get there, we had to break the system originally. The system had to be broken with some sort of trauma, had to say, look, there's more than just the system that appears perfect, that sure, it was a universe of orderliness, but not necessarily spontaneity, which I certainly associate love and spontaneity. That love is not, there is no procedure for love. It doesn't follow any preconceived path. That love and spontaneity come together. And to me, it seems like the trauma set us free in order to explore that path that is total freedom, which has to embrace the possibility for chaos. We have to acknowledge that chaos can result if we're going to be free to create, but then we have to take personal responsibility for that. Mm-hmm. I hope that made sense. That was a big chunk of what I wanted to say.
I just want to weave back to what Shane and I just read with what you're saying, because I can't leave from my own gnosis, or what I felt so strongly is that there was an unexpected event here, that I feel like the natural flow of this organic life forms that were being, I see Tiamat as this luminous body of water, okay, that was the generator of this organic life, and that it was going to move into the system. The system itself, seems to me, was the thing that said no, and tried to stop that through the destruction of this beautiful being. Is that a possibility? Well, yes, it is a possibility. And so that the trauma itself wasn't maybe the necessary element. Do you understand where I'm going from? Because organic life forms can create through all sorts of different unexpected ways, and memes and beauty and chaos. Even chaos can be fabulous, but the impact of this matrix constructed world that was also perfect, knowing that something was changing, could have perhaps been the trigger point for that trauma. And I'm not saying I know that. I'm just bringing it in right now as a possibility. Just things that I myself have come up through me that I'm still exploring.
Could it be that, it's just another possibility, could it be that we had to have this trauma, so this consciousness has a matching frequency to come in and be here. And so that may be our plan, is that we express its trauma here so it can come in and we can heal it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what behind all of this is the war consciousness. You know, it seems like that's what it's all about for us. Because for me personally, digging into my personal self and going inwards, that's what I ran into it. It was trauma, 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 trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood that I have to step in and heal that trauma instead of rejecting it, because it seemed like that's what I'm here for. Because that I've been working on trauma all my life. First half of my life, I've been gaining all of that experiencing all the trauma over and over and over again. And now another half of my life, I'm apparently releasing it and healing it. So to me, it's a big thing. It's sort of, there's got to be a reason for, so when I'm looking for a reason, I understand now that everything has a reason. And so through clearing my own personal trauma, what I recognize is that with the collective and with our whole solar system, that's where we go, and we eventually have to figure out and heal the trauma. And so it would be no different, I think, than doing it on a personal level. You face the truth about it, and then you change that reality for yourself. You change and heal it within yourself. So this is just a different level, but to me, I think it's all has to do with this original trauma. Our path here, it seems like it just all comes back to that, to trauma.
I agree with that, Lily, and I would say that the reason our lives are so completely overtaken by trauma day in, day out is a reaction to the to the original cause. And that reaction comes about because nobody faces the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority resist it. And as I think it was in the Golden Web series on YouTube, the guy said, to resist is to assist.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all have said so many times, to reveal is to heal. But nobody wants to reveal it, not in themselves, not in others. So it can't be healed until it is revealed.
So true, Claudia. Well, and that becomes the personal journey, is to reveal to yourself in your own state of being how your own shadow operates. And, you know, I've had enough experiences to realize that there are these other, what we call them, dimensions, perhaps we call them dimensions, right? That the shadow self beings are playing out. Each of us that hasn't healed enough of our own shadow or doesn't have that observer intact, our shadow is playing all the time, right? And so the refusal to confront what that shadow, I haven't confronted anything in my own shadow self that did not lead back to trauma. Every single time I've gone into my pain body, all right, and I've stayed with it long enough, sometimes, you know, where I wish I could get out of it, like, you know, but you start to know that this is the only way through. It always leads back to trauma. And I want to say that to people that are afraid to look at their shadows, you know, because there's all this guilt and shame and all sorts of things that are piled on that, right? Just to keep you from seeing it, right? You feel, you know, nobody wants to see themselves as a demonic, but we have demonic shadows, right? Anything that's not been revealed is going to play out in that realm, or it's going to be occupied by the demonic planes. What you don't see in yourself is being occupied, you know. So, but I don't know, I mean, I can't, Lillian, you and I talked about that the other day. How many memories we've had of these attempts to keep us in trauma. You know, when the magical being starts to wake up again, when the powerful force that we really are, the creators that we really are, starts to wake up, in lifetime after lifetime, was hunted down, was tortured, was shamed, was put through rituals that make one soul feel like it's the worst thing that could ever exist. I mean, for me, that's been my path, having to overcome that, overcome feelings of being the absolute worst thing that was ever created. But I keep going through it, and I keep finding more and more events of trauma. So it's like going through it brings you to a certain state of clarity. You start to alleviate yourself of these really false guilt paradigms. So it doesn't mean that I'm not responsible for all my acts. I take that full-heartedly. I'm 100% responsible for all my lives and all my dimensions in all time.
I think that's the key.
Yeah, but it's
because once we recognize that underneath all of this mess is the trauma, I mean, I've learned that for myself when I went into HK, and I went back as far as 10 million years ago. You know, it started, my first memory here on this planet is trauma. So it seems like everything what I was trying to change within myself and try to take control of my reality, I had to clear trauma. Everything was leading back to trauma. And like you were saying, past lives and all of that stuff, so much trauma. But at the same time, as I was working through it, it became very clear to me that it's not that difficult for us to heal it once we recognize it for what it is. And I also started seeing why the system is trying to break us from going down that road. To say, okay, well, you know, this is the trauma. I'm going to, you know, look at it, what it is. We're going to own it. And then it's not going to have power over us anymore once we release that emotionally, you know, whatever you need to do. To me, that also going through this and recognizing this on a personal level, I think it helps us to share with other people so we can understand that on collective levels, that's what we need to do. We need to look at this trauma. And I know that this is sort of a taboo subject, even in spiritual communities. Nobody wants to look at that. Everybody wants to be in this la la land, you know? Because that for the system, it works, you know, keeping people in la la land. But we can't heal on a collective level if we don't face our collective trauma.
Yeah, and like, I just wanted to give my experience in just a shallow way, not get too deep with it. It'll take like a short story or a movie to go through all my story, but yeah, just the shame, like Christine, like what you're saying with shame. It's, to me, with my background, shame was the hugest thing for me. And I just covered it over with this veil of trying to be perfect and trying to be in this state of love and bliss and just let it go, it's okay. And it's like, no, that doesn't help. That's just a Band-Aid or, you know, just a little icing on the cake. But take it off, take it down, get back down into the ingredients of what made this happen in your life, and face it. And when I started doing that and talking about it, expressing the shame, there was no longer any hold on that for me. It just deflated. It took all the energy out of the shame. And so many people are so embarrassed of talking about these deep things in themselves. And when I started doing that, my life became transparent and I became more authentic in myself. And that's just the way I had to deal with it.
I mean, the two things that you say there, transparency and authentic, those are the cleaner or the closer I get to my own essential core, the more I'm able to detect when somebody or another or an event is coming through a transparent field or is it coming through a contrived agenda. And once you've learned that discernment by your own authentic self, you're not so easily fooled. And there's a lot of mental confusion out there that I see that, it's like playing off these mind loops back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and never coming to that authentic timbre or sound that you are. Like, I know that I'm sitting here right now, and I know that every aspect of me that is in all the other lives that I've lived is somehow reflected right here, right now. It's not so shattered anymore. It's right here, right now, right? So my life is a living metaphor or a living myth of who I've always been, and that's the beauty and the depth of what we call being authentic. It's like the shame, the veils and the shame and the, all of that. I don't want to hide anything. I don't want to have anything to hide, but that just takes the inevitability. Who said inevitability of, yeah, right? The inevitability is that we are all walking to that place. It feels inevitable. Like there's nowhere else to go. You can go all the way down to bottom, but once you hit that finite place, there's only the inevitable.
I know that people are so afraid of that, what I call it, a fake darkness.
Uh-huh.
It's so powerless compared to our, even take that true darkness, the organic, that, the beginning of it all. It's still unknown, but trusting that, that who you are is still there. I mean, for a lot of people today, it seems like we have to remind them that they're creative human beings, that they've got, that they're beautiful. People are so out there that I just don't know. And part of my speaking up and all of that stuff, I just want to tell people is that go in.
Mm-hmm.
To go in, because we flipped. We had all this, outside sources of information and everything, and even in the people that are going to be listening to us, okay, they are still going to belong to some of those communities, alternative communities and all the spiritual teachings and things like that. And they hear us, and it doesn't make sense. It seems like we're doing things backwards, because it was all about all this outside things that's supposed to be powerful, and here we were nothing, and now we're like, no, we're not nothing, and so it seems like we're bashing all those great spiritual teachings and everything. It's not. It got you here, and now you're right here where you have to understand that everything is within. We always knew that, but we couldn't understand practically what does it mean for everything is within. And now what we're trying to figure out is pull that from within, because we know everything is within. And so we're going into this subjects that have not been talked about, and try to pull that information from within, because we do. I had been going back to that fact that the knowing is, it's like a DNA or whatever is activating, but the knowing is there. It had started coming in for a long time now. For those that were open to look in, it is always available. It was always available on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's for those that have been so lost, like I was, that it took me a little bit of a push from the planet to say, excuse me, it's right here. It's just, and for the people that I try to reach, that they're people that are just like me. So that's why I share it, because I've been in those shoes. I've been searching out and had no idea on the time that, it was all here anyway, even knowing that when I was a child. I say I had 7 years of my childhood where I was in that perfect place where I'm trying to go back right now to that where everything was beautiful and all I saw is beauty. So I'm trying to see that right now for myself, within myself. So it's always coming back to us. And all of those teachings, even that taught us that everything was outside of us, there was always a little bit of truth in everything. So there was truth in there. Even like, and I like to quote Bible sometimes and everything, there is truth in there. But I think it's up to each individual to first accept themselves at least a little tiny bit. At least a tiny bit, and step into that direction. And we talk about entrusting that. And so here we are trying to be the example of that and saying, okay, we're going to take this subject and go in with whatever we can come up with from within. And we're not going to be afraid that we're going to be wrong. Because I think I have to give a disclosure. Whatever I'm saying, I'm just saying what I feel. I don't think about it. And then that's not guaranteed that that's how it is. That's how it is for me. That's how I feel. And I could be so wrong. So.
Big step, Lily. I mean, it really is a big step for any being right now, is to get past outside of the need to be right. This is one of the biggest things that keep people in. I wanted to ask Shane a question, but I just wanted to, like, the essence of that little bit that you said is like, the ability of greatness to me is the ability that we have to see through everything to the contrary, to touch that being, that soul that is in every one of us. And, this takes, that would be my description of it. And I've been gifted and blessed on so many occasions to see past every piece of evidence to the contrary when I look at somebody, to feel that resonant beauty that they are. Every being here has that beauty in them. Everyone does, right? And so it's a process of uncovering your own light. And that's what I wanted to ask Shane a little bit, if he'd like to say something about, the dark course, the course that brings souls into these dark families, into these ritual abuse. I mean, I think all of us, Lori has a huge body of trauma with her life that she lived through, right? But what she has found going through these traumas is her own inner light. I mean, do we really find it outside ourselves?
Never. It's not what happens to the being, it's what the being does once it happens to them. And we don't put ourselves in situations that we can't handle at the deepest levels. We need to remember that there's no skill or talent or power involved in creating trauma. It can be done by accident. It can be done by the most weak-minded and weak-spirited being. The people who create trauma don't have power over you. Trauma doesn't have power over you. We give other things power over us. whether that's trauma or whether that's the people who create trauma. The shadow is so important that Peter Pan had to sew it back onto his own feet.
Love that.
We need to, it is a part of growing up. It is a part of moving beyond any of our excuses. Things happen. It's not a perfect world. It's not meant to be a perfect world. We didn't sign up for a perfect experience. And we signed up for something that's going to be beautiful and magical and educational and spark growth, not just in ourselves. That's where it starts, but in everything around us. And if you don't, as you develop these traumas that are going to come, there's no avoiding trauma. You can do your best, and you should do your best, but sometimes you're going to stumble into it because it's that easy to create. You have.
That was good.
You have to create the time for yourself to heal these things as they come along. Start with everything that's happened in your life now. There's many different methods out there. Lily mentioned HK. Dianetics is great. Various forms of regression therapies can get you back into these traumas and help you take clear looks at them and heal them. Once you get to a point, you're going to start rolling back into deeper memories, and call those genetic memories, soul memories, past life memory, whatever you want to call it. Most of us reach a point where we realize that there's more than just what's happened to us in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where we're at now, is trying to give some possibilities as to what those things might be, so that we can take a look in the shadow and see what we pull out. For me, life wasn't great, but I have never used that as an excuse to repeat any of the mistakes that happened around me, or any of the things that happened around me. My number one goal as a being is to leave this world better than I came into it, and to treat people better than I have been treated. And I think that all of us doing that, it kind of works like a pay it forward system, where we start naturally healing things without as much effort as it requires doing it without any support or any love from others. And I think that once you start looking at all those shadow aspects, and you start forgiving and healing and processing all of the various things that have happened around you, life gets better, and you start to be able to witness beauty a lot more clearly. And that's where we get our energy from. Mm-hmm. And we generate it within our chakra system by witnessing that beauty. The more of the shadow we clear out, the more light we let in, the more beauty we can see, the more of that energy we can generate, the more we have to give back to creation.
Wow, thank you. That's beautiful. And it's nice to hear somebody state so clearly why they're here. So few really know why they're here. And, that would just be my way of saying to anybody listening to go inside yourself, because once you have your own compass, once you have that beam on yourself, it becomes your directional. Lori, do you want to maybe just explore a little bit? I know that you've been having some really strong past life memories. Lori and I have a very strong connection. It sometimes seems like we're both in the same memory bank, I guess. I don't know how to call it. But you're touching into some past life memories right now that seem to have been a fundamental trauma on the planet. And how
makes my heart kind of race even just thinking about it.
Go ahead.
Well, it has to do with the whole practice of blood sacrifice, and what that was all about, and why that was done, and why it's still being done. I'm not going to go into the memories that have been surfacing or the imagery or whatever. But it has to do with the fact, it goes back to Roman times. That's the picture I'm getting. It goes beyond that, but for me, that seems to be pivotal in my memories right now. And it has to do with the priesthood that basically opened a portal to the other side. And these blood sacrifices were a way of keeping that energetic doorway open, and for them to receive whatever they did from these beings and whatever they still do. So that's part of the pain and trauma that has to be healed. I know that I have some involvement in that. I'm not exactly sure in what way yet. But it's very traumatic just remembering, scenes of what they did and what they're still doing. I know it's the same today. It hasn't changed. Goes at least back to Atlantis. A lot of, they burn people alive, babies. They burn babies alive. And that trauma was actually fed into
Excuse me.
a black stone.
Excuse me.
And they use that. It's like a battery. It's like a psychic battery. And so that's some of what we have to heal. I mean, so for me, I had a huge pain body, so intense. I didn't think I'd ever gain any headway. They subtly teach us from childhood, that we're all sinners. We have to stop the self-flagellation. Because that's part of the problem. We're taught that we're so imperfect that it's going to literally take lifetimes, or we're all going to have to just leave our lifetimes behind and go join an ashram and sit in meditation for hours every day to possibly gain any chance of making spiritual headway, so that we don't continue to create this trauma, because it's still ongoing today, as we can see all over the planet. But I think that's a big lie. I mean, or if it was true at one time, it isn't true now. As each trauma gets healed, it gets a little easier. I can tell you that for sure. One of the most powerful things I ever saw was when my daughter went through this program. She was a teenager, and she went to this, I think it was a week-long retreat. And one of the things they dealt with was the pain body. And, she had a huge pain body. And it was one of the most traumatic things I think she's ever experienced, to lay on the floor and have, someone be supportive of you, and yet kick, scream, cry, do whatever you have to do to release that pain body. And she was like a totally different person after this. It was like magical. And so she got a taste of that's what we can be. That's what we really are under all that pain. And so if I have anything to say, it's really learning to love yourself. That's where it starts. If you can't really develop that trust relationship with your deep inner self, that you're not garbage, and that you're, that what you find deep inside yourself is, that you can't trust it. That, to me, that's key. That's where I have found the greatest resources, right in there. And so, it's hard to actually go back to the origins of some of this pain. I mean, it went beyond that, but that's how it's been anchored in on this planet, and that's how it continues to be. Mm-hmm. And I also feel that as we each heal our individual pain bodies, it reflects in everything around us. I mean, it extends to the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom. They all begin to behave differently, I've noticed. And so that's, you start getting a taste of that and you want more. And so that's really what I would encourage for anyone listening to this, is just really take the first step. It's really, you won't regret it. And one last thing, while I'm getting a moment to talk, is that, we talk about this maybe having been a necessary step. And I keep, I've done a lot of research on the concept of the world egg, and you know, how something is about to be birthed. And if you think about it, an egg, a chick when it's inside the egg has everything it needs. You know, it's got a perfect environment. It doesn't need anything. And then as it continues to grow in that egg, it uses up all the resources, and eventually that environment actually becomes very hostile, so hostile that it has to peck its way out. And in fact, something on the outside can't poke a hole in that eggshell, or it won't develop the strength to survive on its own. So it has to develop the strength to peck its way out of the shell in order to enter basically the great unknown. Anyway, that's all I've got.
That was beautiful.
Nature always shows us how to do it. Nature always shows us the way. That's a great example.
That's beautiful. Yeah, so man, I just went straight down into that pain, you know, because what we're really talking about right now is the collective pain body, the trauma that's been impressed in matter, and those that continue to do it. And man, I couldn't help myself. I started doing some clearing here. The blood sacrifice, the dark priesthood, you know, this is part of what we're also doing to reveal this, because it's not enough to just heal your own self when you get it to a certain point. You need to put the pieces on the table so that others can see them too. And this has certainly been, Rome to me also is very, very, very pivotal. There is, you know, we talk about, and this is kind of interesting, I'm going to go sideways here for a moment. We talk about all the different races that are very commonly spoken of, like the Dracos, the Greys, you know, the Arcturians. I've never really gotten into our galactic history all that much myself, but what was in my memories, what was Rome was really about was taking out a certain aspect or a certain part of our DNA so that we could never reestablish ourselves. It is really the most, we were almost totally wiped out. And that is those of us that know, call it a bloodline if you will, the ones that were the most sacrificed, the most hunted down, the most taken over, the most tracked throughout time. Those that I'm speaking to know exactly who I'm speaking to, right? So the truth is they could never actually get what they wanted from us. And I don't make that us being anybody special, although there is within our DNA a memory, and I believe that we're bringing that back up right now. And I'm not going to go into the race from which I believe it comes from, but I've had my own memories of that over and over again, and most specifically in regards to Rome. So, Illy, if you want to say something, because I know that we were talking about that what they keep looking for in these blood ritual sacrifices, they'll never obtain it. They can't. It doesn't exist within that physical form that they can extract this out. I mean, Claudia could say a lot about it too. I mean, a lot about it. A lot about what they've done with the blood of these.
Yes. The way I feel, it's like it's becoming so obvious, you know, that they will never get it. And so those that are still trying to get that, they're just pure idiots, in my opinion.
Yeah, and bringing about their own destruction, really. If you really look
exactly,
at it, they're bringing about their own destruction because they can't continue to exist in this manner. It's just, that's an inevitable in my mind too.
It's always been a lie. All of their reasons for doing what they're doing don't truly exist. They just believe that they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're you know, the people in the system, or that being assimilated into the system, or the control, whatever, the pyramid, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. It's because they're also built on the belief systems. Their whole structure is built on the belief system. So for that, you know, their internal knowing doesn't freaking matter.
Mm-hmm.
They have a belief system, and it's probably a different belief system from layer to layer to layer. And so that's the strength of that system, is because for as long as people in that system subscribe to those belief systems that they've been trained to, then it's going to hold up. And this is why it's crumbling right now, because people are not people awakening within that system. And so for that, what they want, they can't achieve anymore, because there's a breakage in that whole belief structure, because this level is doing this and they believe it's for the better of humanity, but there people probably that go and take the babies for blood sacrifice, they believe they're doing it for the right reasons. This is why I always talk about belief systems, how awful they are, because they completely kill anything that's alive within us. It kills our gut feeling completely, because you're not supposed to trust that when you have a belief system, very strong belief system. So, and that can be twisted and controlled. This is how the whole control system is controlled. And so right now what they're doing is they always try to control what I call, there is a bloodline, and I just call it a human bloodline, because I don't even, I might know some names, but sometimes when you say things, because they're so close to the dark side, because they took and copy all of our real stuff, so that I can't even use these words, because people are going to say, oh, Lily went crazy and dark.
Oh, God. No.
So,
yeah, it is. And see, that's another aspect. And I don't like to use the word bloodline because that is a separating quality. This bloodline, that bloodline, this bloodline, that bloodline, right? But there is something contained in the blood, in the human blood, right? That they have been tinkering with, trying to find some secret with. And I'm going to go right back to what Neil said in the very beginning, is that we are creators. We are this human vessel, right? That, and this is my own inner journey also, this human vessel, right? That we misalign, we degrade, we ourselves are responsible for this incredible coming together of all of these races, of all of these aspects and angles of creation. We came in as an angle of creation, right? And so it's just like, and yet if we were to say that we're not, I think you said it, Shane, in one of your talks, it's not like anything's better than anything else, but we all are different. We all are unique. We all are a part of something, and the whole key to me seems to be each of us discovering our part of what we are, right? And somehow that will give us all, because not everybody is equal energetically, not everybody is born into the same situation, but those that have done enough work and have retrieved enough of their memory, which to me means energy. Okay, it's energetics. This really comes down to energetics, or literally changing the reality. I don't remember, Lori said it so beautifully, right? You start to see through this retrieval of this process, you start to see how you're affecting the reality around you. That's where the term that we move mountains comes from. Right? And it's not independent on one single elite bloodline. Certainly not. I mean, I know in my relationship to each of you, each of them is very distinct and different.
That's the other thing. That's I'm doing research, and the funny thing that I'm finding out about that all this elite bloodlines have actually been infected with a human.
Exactly. Well, so well said, right?
I mean, the stuff that makes sense right now is so crazy.
Right.
Again, we can see it in nature, because if you introduce one new life form or one new species into a ecosystem, it can change everything, right? So one person, like Lori said, doing that work and changing themselves does have that effect on the entire bioenergetic ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And the mineral kingdom. I mean, this is where, I'm like, right now, my explorations are tending towards rock and mineral and trees, the actual vegetation realm that's here also, because everything is information. And if you start to go into the rock formations and into the ancient rock structures, I mean, that as a field of information that's been here always, right? I mean, it holds that memory. It's not that easy to penetrate, or maybe it is for some. For me, it hasn't been. So, that's again where that extended feeling body, that human vessel form, right? The energetics of it allows us to, as Neil said, touch a tree, right? That alone, like touching the bark of a tree, can become an existential experience beyond anything that the false matrix can create. The false matrix has nothing compared to nature. Nothing. I mean, it becomes a hollow, empty shell at that level.
Yeah, and Christine, adding to that about trees, like me, I love to paint. I'm an artist, and so I go out into nature, and one of the biggest things I paint is trees and landscapes and things. But when I look at a tree, I look at the bark and I touch it and I feel it and I sit there with it and I paint it. And the whole feeling of the connection with Mother Earth and the tree comes out into my paintings. And to me, that's a way that I can express this beauty and the creation. And it's been a huge thing for me to be able to release a lot of trauma that way in myself by expressing my creative side and connecting to rocks and trees. I love painting those. That they're so unique and they're so beautiful in themselves. And yeah, it's just my little way of doing it.
Yeah, it's we're kind of sitting between two aspects right now, where we have this horrible traumatic aspect that's still going on here, and this expression that is coming out through beauty. Beauty to me is one of my key compass points, right? Even if I'm in a memory of a traumatic event, there's something beautiful. There's something extraordinary even in that. And for me, that becomes part of the healing process. It's not that resistance to it anymore. It's not, I can't deal with this, I can't. It's like, oh, this opened up and I'm going in, right? And I'm going to find out what's here. And, I've learned that it's not always all that pleasurable, but coming out of that, there is an extraordinary beauty. It's joy, it's felt, and that cannot be manufactured. That cannot be captured, that cannot be bought, that cannot be sold, that can't. And
so, we're talking about two sort of understanding two different fields of operation, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about this living field that we're sort of starting to experience and trying to work with this field of energy. But also what I'm noticing is so much easier to see how this original trauma is almost like, it keeps repeating itself on every level. And the one thing that I am sort of starting to see right now is the feminine and masculine and the rip between that, because everything is energy, and then energy here has either masculine or feminine expression, right? And so I see that a lot of that, these two energies sometimes are pushed against each other to recreate trauma. So then same experience or same cycle can be relived again. And I'm seeing it that the original trauma, as you might want to see, is for that to create war. Whatever it is, you know, whatever level it is to create that war or create the friction energy. Okay, and so we're seeing this right now with a lot of, you know, trying to look back at, say, okay, this was you know, system trying to recreate trauma and all of that stuff, and come out of it and say, okay, I'm taking a path within. But at the same time, you can see so clearly how this trauma and friction energy is trying to be recreated over and over and over again. It seems like that is the trap for souls to go into another expression of this war consciousness on this planet, because that's what it wants to do. It wants to express. This consciousness wants to express itself here in the human collective. That's what it's been doing. It's been feeding off of it through expressing it through us. And so once we close the door there and go in, it cannot get in. But at the same time, I see so much of this, and especially using the feminine against masculine.
So glad you bring that up, Lily.
It is so obvious. It's like, so this sort of, you know, I always want to try to look, what does it mean for a bigger picture? What does it say for a bigger picture? And to me, it says, you know, that our solar system and everything, and we talk about, you know, our planets having a masculine and a feminine energy, and how all of that is sort of being always pushed against each other. And that's, I think, you know, I see this on, you know, with countries. And, you know, especially like for me, I'm watching what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, you know. This is a country that was always one. It has never been at war within itself. And right now, it is at war within itself. People are shocked because it's like, you know, the way I look at that energy, you know, one country represents more feminine aspect, and then there's a masculine aspect to that whole situation. And it's like domestic violence with blood and all of that stuff. And I know exactly what is happening there, but your soul, I mean, this is the home of my soul. And watching that, I mean, it's like somebody's sticking a freaking knife in me. Just watching that, and people don't understand what it's all about. This is, and for me now, understanding how we can fix that, it's like we can scream and yell here about who's doing right thing and who's doing wrong thing in their government, or who's affecting who, but it's all about people. If people don't stand up and do what they're told and don't create this trauma again, then they are taking control. It is all up to us, little people, little nobodies. If we can change this, we can change it only from this way, where each individual recognizes what is happening and chooses different.
To quote Shane, and I quote him often on that, choose wisely. I mean, you know, and I see something also happening in that dynamic, Lily, between the male, this is called the polar energies of the male and the female, because creation takes place in those poles, right? That spark, you know, when they're in balance, they spark each other, and that's where the creation, that space in between those polar dynamics is actually where creation takes place. This is the place that they don't ever want us to go. They don't ever want us to discover this, right? So even in the further out dualities right now, what I'm seeing is that it's not enough to just point out the dark side. we have to embody the creator self here. We have to be ruthless in our love and fierce enough to not buy in to even the closest to us, to victim, to anything that isn't embodying this aspect of who we are. And that's the hardest thing on a personal level. This is like, I think what all of us have said in one way or another, like wake up one day and you go, oh my God, this is what I'm being prepared for. Do I have it in me to do this? Do I have enough in me to be able to hold that force, that pillar, that strength, that sword of truth that's me, so that I don't deviate when they throw anything at me, right? And they will continue to test me, you, and all of us into our ability to do that. Can I hold both those dynamics within me? Within balance, within me, within harmony. That's the first step. And that is the crucible, and that's whatever we want to call it. But when we get to a certain place within that aspect, we have an opportunity in our further extended life, to be able to do that. But it isn't enough. And we're past pointing out. It's all been seen. There's nothing new out there in that matrix. Nothing. It's all been revealed. Now, what can we do from within ourselves? We're not going to go out and find some other horrible method of torture. Who needs to know that at this point? Who needs to understand that it's a war machine, that it's money behind it all? But now the big question to each little individual, you, me, and all of us, is what can we do about it? What can we actualize in ourselves? And the first place they're always going to come for any individual is into the relationship of the male and the female, or the love relationship. It's just, if they can't get to any of us any other way, they will do it straight through that, because this also becomes the compression of ourselves that brings up from within us the strength that we need for whatever is next. Because this, as we already started saying, this is a fluid universe. This is moving, moving, moving. How fluid can we get? How really, truly, what was the word? Intrepid. I don't know. Inevitability. How each of us, I can't do this for anybody else, but I can do it for myself. That's all I really know right now. And I know that dynamic that you're talking about, that I feel it in my own body, that this rift, all right? Well, we could go and talk about Lucifer right now. That light that separated itself out and put itself down into dark matter, okay? That longing that we have for that union is the thing that drives us. And it is, well, for me right now, it's been the biggest challenge I've found personally, to be able to hold my own inner truth. But when we do it, that's the thing. That's what Lori was saying. When we're able to do that under pressure, everything starts to revolve around us. The universe flows in, and she's abundance, and she's beauty, and she's just like, everything's here to help us if we don't falter.
Our personal process of healing the rift, because that's what we're doing. We're healing this rift. Because time is energy as well, so put it back together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just just male female relationship. It's all relationships. Everything, even my relationships with animals, friends, family, everybody. It's changing because you change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, it's an indicator how much I change, how deep I go. I see on the outside how my relationships are changing, and how it's either growing, or that what no longer serves me goes away, So going deeper, that which is fake and no longer serves you is just sort of will have to go away and become a space dust in your life. So, all that change, and especially we talk about this year being that big change, it's you have a whole different, as you drop in deeper into yourself, you have a different perspective. My perspective changes completely. And I see, and I see the way my outside world and my relationships, all kinds of relationships, reflect that path that I'm on, going deeper in. And so the deeper I go in, the more changes on the outside, and my hair get darker.
I noticed that. It looks really good on you, Lily.
Yeah.
mine's getting lighter. I'm letting it go white.
Okay.
That brings into
That was just
a play.
Yeah, next time you will see I'll be like totally jet black.
Right. But I was going to, bring Shane into the conversation and Niels because, and Claudia too. But it's just like, what aspect of us has been so suppressed is our imagination. Our lack of trust in our imaginary process. And I know, in a lot of the things we bring in, Bruce Lipton and the imaginary cells of the caterpillar and all of the aspects of us as organic beings in this process right now, being able to free ourselves enough to imagine, and that becomes like such a key point to us. I mean, I know, Shane, that you, through your music and your expression and your painting and your writing and Claudia's writing and all of this feeling that we are expressive beings has such an important value that also has been suppressed and belittled and made to look like it doesn't do anything, and just those artists over there. And yet if we really look at the way the world's been manipulated, it's through the arts. It's through the music, it's through the media, it's through the visual effects. It's like we're always being bombarded. How deep can we go in ourselves and start pulling out our own imaginary abilities? Seems to be a big piece of that also.
Niels, this is a good time for you to jump in.
Yeah. I knew who was going to pass that ball there. I wasn't sure.
That's fine. I just wanted to say that there's a great deal of power in imagination, and I'd almost go so far as to say all power is in imagination. If we're going to talk in terms of the power to change anything, the only place that change can come from is our imagination. If we want to have any control over that change, that's the only place it can really come from. If we have no imagination, we're stuck in the status quo, and that's just where it's going to be. One thing that I've been thinking here, it just came to me during this discussion and kind of going back to where I started from. What is the function or the result of trauma on the most basic level is that it creates separation. It creates separation in consciousness. I might even go so far as to say it's the creator of ego. Ego was created in a traumatic event. That's where our ego came from, is through this separation in consciousness that perhaps before any great trauma, we simply identified with the system that we were a part of, and that was easy and seemed perfect. But the next step in growth, in order to step into creatorship, there had to be this separation in order to insert the creator into the creation. And that again comes back to that the trauma was necessary, and that we had to become these egoic beings that are traumatized beings, and then heal the whole thing so that we can finally step into the healed creator and use our imaginations, and then step forward into the next phase of creation, which is, I believe that's where we're standing on the cusp of this new creation that we will be stepping into once the trauma is healed collectively.
So freeing the imagination or trusting yourself, I mean, this has been a process that we on Earth Empaths have been experiencing for many years working together, is that we've freed up our imagination. So and imagine, the ability to imagine isn't just bringing something forward, it's actually being able to penetrate realities and see what's there and allow that to come into the field in whatever way, whether it's through music, word, painting. You know, we're all interpreting realities, really. That's really what we're doing. We're interpreting energy into realities. And, you know, for me, it's like one of the most deep experiences I've had is the remembering of the fall into this matrix. I remember it. I remember it in every way. I remember the way the sound stopped. I'm not saying that this is the way it was. But for me, it was a very visceral thing. But now my expanded ability to free my mind from the construct, I see it healing. I actually literally can go into that space, become participant of it, and I can start to see it's almost like we've seen this, you know, I know Lori and Claudia here, when we've done some of those things, it's like we see like almost like a gossamer web that's very fluid, that is somehow, there's something coming into creation right now, right? And we're all part of that. And the reason I want to speak of this is that allowing ourselves free reign, just free reign, like free it up. Don't censor yourselves. It's so easy to see how people self-censor. You know, we don't really even need control grid out there. We're really good at censoring ourselves, right? So something tangible, something knowable, observable is really, I feel, what this year's about for us. And being able to share that with each other. And the more of us that keep meeting, sharing, you know, it's not like we're creating these bound relationships either, right? We're not making contracts with each other. We're not making deals with each other, you know, but we're allowing ourselves to come into each other's space, share, and take what we learn and go and continue to flow with it.
A great deal of difficulty in my life has always been how to deal with other people. I've always looked at life's problems, or it's always other people's fault. I mean, that's just that's wrong, of course. But I recently came into a new realization, and if I could, I'd like to share another poem, if that's all right, which is my most recent poem, and to me, this is a foundational poem. I cried at the end of it when I wrote it. Hopefully I can read it without getting too emotional. This one is called My Outgoing Call. So this is basically what I'm saying to every otherness that exists out there. So this is my outgoing call. I call to thee, sacred other, in all your faces, personalities, concerns, and ask so very little. It is not my desire to wring wisdom from the meat of your generational thought. No, instead hold space for me. Give me pause. Allow me breath, that I may turn to my own storied quietude. Help me to hold that creative inner space where I have known you since eternity began. If you counter-propose a will to control me, provide for me, coddle me, into what should have been my adulthood, then I must turn away in this moment, even as you starve. Would it not be better for us all, right now, to come together in choice and collaboration, than tomorrow crying at the feet of mercy? Come on now, you've nothing to lose. This false bravado, this superiority, claiming to know better what is best for me, is unsustainable and only leads to starvation. Must your falsity be so painfully proven again and again? Just give me this tiny space without interference, this island in our shared chaos, and let me put together the pieces of the whole universe within me. I am a creator. It is not within me to destroy you. Trust me, finally, as I say unto you, that all, yea, verily all, shall be resolved in the space created where I can learn to simply trust myself. That's the poem.
I'm just
That's
That for me
beautiful.
was,
Absolutely beautiful, Niels.
yeah.
I liked it when I wrote it. And,
Pure
you know,
expression is beautiful. I just want to suggest something just for a moment. Let's hold that space right now. For Niels, for me, for Trudy, for Lily, for Lori, for Claudia, for Shane, and for everybody else right here. You know, I can only say from every aspect of vibration within my cellular body memory right now that trust is huge. It's a big piece. We need to trust me.
and all I need from anyone else is just give me that space to trust. That's it. That's all I need.
Right. And the wisdom to really that inner part of us, you know, till we get there. Hold that for all those that are verging right now, because I also feel that there are many, many, many souls right now verging that I just haven't really taken that step and made this talk here today be part of them trusting themselves. You know, the universe opens magnificently when we trust ourselves.
I think that's why we're doing what we're doing and trying to post this out there for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Is to say that we are learning to do that for ourselves, and what we're finding is all this beauty that we can all come together and create if we choose to. Because it is all up to us. We can choose right now to change everything.
Exactly.
All we need to do is come together. We can change everything. We're the ones who are holding all the systems up. We just have to choose not to hold it up anymore. It's like, it almost sounds so easy. It just sounds so easy. And I think if only we trust ourselves that we actually can create a beautiful future, beautiful reality, then that would be enough. Because the desire to create a beautiful reality here is so strong within it. I mean, there's so many groups of people on the planet that have been holding that vision alive for us. I'm in fact very grateful to a lot of original people on the planet that hold that vision for us through all this nastiness that we were part of, and all the pain and all the trauma that we kept recreating because we weren't ready to deal with our original trauma. And I think now we are, so we need to be grateful to those that held that vision for us. Said that the time will come where we can fix this. And so now is the time. We can fix it, and it seems like it's very easy. All we need to do is dig in and realize that actually what we want is this wonderful reality, and recognize that we actually can create it. And then the rest will just fall into place.
Yeah.
At least that's my wish.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, I say if it wasn't a possibility for us, we wouldn't be here talking about it.
Right.
Because it's a possibility, and like you were saying on the beginning, Christine, that we're pulling all this information from the field, from a living field. So it's here. It's not like it's not here. It's here. I knew from the very beginning that things that I was understanding, I was not the only one. So for that, I never said, okay, here's my information, this is new information and this is what it is. This is what's coming. Everybody listen to me. It's no, this is what I'm feeling. And I know that there is all these other people on the planet that are pulling information or activating that information within, or pulling it from within their own selves. It's there. This reality is there because we've all imagined it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've imagined it, that we can create, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a dream
So
body.
it's very possible.
It's a living dream body, because, if anybody that's studied the native peoples of the planet or tapped into your own memories of them, they've always held it. It's never gone away. It's always been here for us to discover, really. All possibilities always have existed. So it doesn't seem like, I know when you're in the midst of a traumatic event in your life, it can feel like from one day that you're never going to be able to get out of bed again. That this is the end. I mean, how many of us have felt that way? And yet you realize that life itself has its own pulse. It has its own energy. And I like to call it water. I like to relate it to the flow of water. And that can't be extinguished. That can't be put out. That can't be stopped. I mean, that's a fool's mission out there that thinks that it can, stop that from happening. It's like a dam's going to burst here. It's inevitable. I keep saying that. I love that word. So,
yeah, it's funny, Christine. I was out. I've had this cough, and anyway, I'm getting over it. But yesterday, I went out to get some fresh air, and I looked at my rose bushes because all winter, the snow was. Excuse me. The snow was covering the leaves, so I couldn't rake them, and finally the snow held around a long time this year. So I went out and I raked the leaves, and I could see these little crocuses like popping up, and they're like, "Oh, help me!" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll get the rotted leaves off you." But yet the leaves actually kept them warm during the winter and gave them nutrients. But anyway, I started looking at my rose bushes and started clipping them, and because they got all wild towards the fall, and I started clipping them back, and they're hooking on me. Roses, they're very painful to deal with. So I put my gloves on and my long shirt on, and here I'm clipping away at the roses and realizing that there's some old stalks there, old main stalks that still were budding. And there was some old stalks that weren't budding anymore. They were actually just decomposing. Sorry, my voice here. But anyway, it made me realize that as I cut away at it and I just went with the flow of it, because I'm not an arborist. I don't know how to go about trimming rose bushes. We just moved into this house a year and a half ago, and it was established. So I come into this and I get this feeling, well, I'm going to keep the old stalks that are strong and still producing roses. The ones that are older, I'm going to pull them away. And then there's some suckers there that are just sucking all the life out of the new roses. So I trimmed back the suckers. I thought, well, they're not going to contribute to beautiful roses. So I just knew distinctively in myself what to do. So I just trimmed back those, and then I looked back at it all and I thought, wow, now this is going to make a really good rose bush that's going to be beautiful, allowing new stems to grow on it and beautiful roses to grow. So I just took this all into how life really is. We have to, in ourselves, we have to get rid of the old rotted things in ourselves that aren't serving us any longer. And the old stuff in us that still is providing us with the beauty and the potential and is there so that our imagination on the new vines can make these beautiful roses. So
thank you, Trudy.
Kind of came about that with nature.
I keep, it just keeps coming back to me, beauty. Beauty is such a key point in understanding who we are and what nature is. And a rose is a very special, I can't even call a rose a symbol. A rose is an essence. there's something so essential about rose oil itself, that distillation. I see it as an alchemical process of distilling down to what you could describe maybe as a pure drop of compassion or a pure drop of beauty. Like, I feel like this process that we're in is also taking all of this information, everything we can experience and share with each other, and distilling it down to something. And from that point, we will be expressing something totally new. And as we're healing, see, that's the feeling that I've had for years now, that we're going to be expressing something totally new, right? We're not, and how exciting is that?
I know, it's like, why can't people get excited about it?
I know.
Keep dragging us into the system. It's like, okay, here, back to the same game. No.
I know. So
it seems like we've been waiting for this time, though.
Eons of time.
Preparing for a long time. It seems like I've been waiting for this lifetime for 10 million years. I've said it before.
I'm about 65 million years in right now, so, it's just like, oh, okay. Well, this is lovely. I don't know if anybody wants to say any more about, we really
didn't talk much, did we?
No, I was gonna, it's like, did we get to the root of evil here?
Maybe with the rose bushes, with the thorns, a little bit of roots of evil.
I don't know. I mean, it's...
Oh, there's so much double meaning in that. Why do you think some of there was a rose bloodline?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yep.
There's all kinds of mysteries there too. But I think that what I get from that is that, beautiful things are painful as well. So just for those of us that experience a lot of pain in our lives, that's still our beauty. Like Christine, you were saying, it's about beauty. That is beauty as well. To go through something like that and come out of it and be the rebel, and say, okay, it is what it is. I'm going to rise above it, because that's what rebel is to rise above all of that nastiness.
And transform it as we go, because we do know that, I mean, I think everyone's here and listening is that, that aspect of us healing ourselves, we're healing the all. You can't, there's no self and other. I mean, that's what, really basically the fundamental of it. The other wants to separate from you and say it's other. But when you're in that wholeness, you know that there is no other. And so when you start to really embody that, like embody it in your being, you recognize that what you're healing in you, it has repercussions out through, that's wherever it goes. The extension of it is more than I can even begin to comprehend right now. So, this is what I feel that these talks are about. I don't know if anybody hasn't spoken for a minute. Claudia, I don't know if you wanted to add, or Lori or Shane. Quiet. I have to laugh because I don't know where this is going to go, but we started a session because I'm always the one that talks. So I
know, me too. I end up talking all the time.
I know. And so I started a session with the ladies the other day, and I said, I'm going to be silent now.
Doesn't work, Christine.
Nobody said anything.
Same thing here. Everybody's quiet. Because I think we went off topic.
I think so too. But like we say, So there is another aspect. I don't know if we want to do it today, take a break, whatever, but it's the exploration of this root, of how evil really implanted here. And I don't speak lightly of evil, right? I was going to say something earlier, and Shane, I don't know, you're doing neck rolls right now. But when you were talking about the levels of the bureaucrats or the technocrats or the doers, the followers, as Mark Passio calls them, that are just mechanically believers of a system that don't even question it, and they're out there. There's something deep there that's down there. You know, it's. I don't think there's very many of them. I don't think there is. You know, what are we looking at? I want to ask Shane that. What are we looking at? Or Claudia that too. What are we looking at when we say? What type of entity? What type of force? What are we dealing with when we're talking about something that's so the absence of light that its whole objective is to consume?
I suppose something that's missing its purpose, or not understanding that it has a purpose, or maybe even to tie it back to beauty, has never properly recognized beauty, never pulled its head down pulled its head up out of the ground long enough to see the beauty around it. I think there's many kind of causes towards it. The separation, isolation, abandonment.
Okay.
All these different again traumas, I suppose, that are either inflicted by others or self-inflicted, and again, not looking at them, not looking at the shadow. If you don't look at the shadow, it will blind you. I mean, was that saying? You have to look at the dark, or it will work through you. Idle hands, that kind of idea. If you're not paying attention to something, it doesn't make it go away. So if you're not properly respecting those aspects of yourself, they're going to externalize themselves or manifest themselves in a way that you're not in control of. And I think that's what we're seeing in those people, is that they're so afraid of the shadow that their fear fed the shadow, and the shadow consumed them, and all that's left is shadow.
I would imagine all the shadows to be a dark space within yourself, and that space becomes empty, and then something else will fill it, and that something else, I guess, has never benevolent intent. And the more dark space you have within yourself, the more what you ignore, that you need to look at your shadows. And then, let's call it a demonic force, becomes stronger and stronger and stronger until it takes you over completely. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's in their interest to keep the status quo of humanity, because that's how they feed.
So we really are looking at a predatory entities?
I would, no, I'm, at the moment, I'm working on coming out of that paradigm, that there is a predator outside ourselves. It's all mind. Mm-hmm. And of course, the more you accept your body being you, the more darker spaces you accumulate. Because if you live completely in the physical, and all your mind ever revolves around is the typical physical stuff, eating, buying a new car, getting a new TV, consuming, and that's what it causes. The more physical you are, the more attention you pay to the physical realm, the more your spiritual side devolves. And the more your spiritual side devolves, the more, in a way, the more unhuman you become. And so if this happens to you, then you are the one who allows these darker forces to work through you, to take up that space, because you don't have, you don't need that space, or so you think. So something will occupy it.
Well,
That's the way how I see it.
what I'm hearing you say, or if I can speak it back so I understand it correctly, is that if we go into this aspect of us being creator souls or creator beings, or in a preparation, that the darkness that is actualized on the world has come from our own shadow.
Yeah.
Right? So that takes it out of the hand of other. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like any imbalance in any system that's in decay, then other forces can come in that will be opportunistic. Can we call it that way?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So going back
we can look at all the problems around us as aspects of ourselves.
right.
As parts, it's, instead of blaming others for what's going on around us, because I think someone has said it, I'm not sure whose quote this is, but nothing is happening to you, it's happening around you. If we can stop blaming others and start identifying these things as aspects of ourselves that we haven't quite looked at enough yet, and start healing them as individuals, we will see the effect ripple through the collective consciousness and become a reality in our world, where these things become less and less. The need, if you're learning from the dark, then the need for the dark is lessened. Therefore, less dark needs to exist. If you're moving, then you don't need something to spark you moving. You don't need any more force if you're already in motion.
What I just want to add to what Claudia said is that, if we don't own parts of ourselves, somebody else can own it.
Yeah.
So think about it. If we don't own it, then, it's open to other energy to own it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never just sits there. So this is why I think it's so important for us to figure out to own everything about ourselves. And this is when we are in full control. And so taking responsibility for everything. And so for collective, and to translate that into collective humanity, we can't do this blame, dark forces for what they did. We allowed them to do what they did. We told them what to do.
Yeah.
We told them to give us this reality, because we didn't want to take control of it. We didn't want piece of it. So somebody else stepped in and took control of that. And so for that, this is why humanity is controlled right now by a small group, that we gave them that right, because we didn't own our reality.
The term that comes to me, we abdicated our own throne. We literally, whatever it is about us that is sovereign, which is our basic core divinity, that we are sovereign. We never were not sovereign. We just abdicated it. We gave away our responsibility.
I agree with that.
And especially our dark side.
Oh, yeah.
So what expressed as a control system is our dark side. I mean, it still showed up in our collective very strongly. So, and for that right now, how many people are still running around pointing fingers at the dark side? My grandma used to say, when you point a finger, look at your hand.
So true. I mean, I was talking to Christine the other day because we had a kind of challenging time, both of us, throughout December and the turn of the year. And it came like almost naturally to say we were being heavily attacked. And then I was studying some stuff, what I was writing about, and it suddenly hit me, and I thought, gee, what a bloody victim am I that I'm being attacked. And I thought it was hilarious because it's, they are not attacks. They are simply, it's the universe saying, oh, are you sure you are where you think you are? Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, in a way, it was quite a big load off my shoulder to figure that out. Because it's much easier when I realize that I'm doing something. Well, if I'm the one doing it, then I can stop it if I don't like it. If it's someone else, it's going to be harder to stop them.
Yeah, and then once you take that plunge and say, okay, I'm going to own my reality, well, the dark shit's going to show up.
It doesn't take away from the fact that is a plunge, and the more you refine or know yourself, the more you know yourself, the next piece is the challenge that comes next, right? Because it isn't going to just stop there. Oh, okay. Yeah, now we're going to live happily ever after in La La Land.
Dream on.
Right? So there's always the next, and it is a fluid next, and it doesn't even have it's not even like a clock. It doesn't go tick, tick, tick. It goes this way and that way and up and down and around and sideways in all different directions. And there's pauses in between. And it's really learning for me is to ride the current, right? Mm-hmm. To go with that flow, keeping my own navigational self intact, right? And so that becomes a ride.
Yeah.
And
if you can't tame the wolf, then you've got to create a space where the wolf can be its natural self and not harm you, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to. You can't always. Someone used to tell me this story about if you can't kill a monster and you can't make it go away, then you need to create a labyrinth to put the monster into, so that the monster has its own space. And that's kind of an analogy for creating a space for whatever darkness is within you, some way to express it, some way to own it, and that way you can actually look after it and it won't be out of your control. It won't be an idle hand.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because actually when you say that, Shane, the first thing that comes into my mind, isn't that what we created here was a labyrinth? I mean, if you look at the whole construct, it's a labyrinth within a labyrinth within a labyrinth.
Dream within a dream within a dream.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Those Russian Chinese dolls. Yeah,
and I think that that could lead us into a really deep territory to do with time constructs. But
it's just symbols, right? Like it's just symbols that it applies to everything. It's everything is a kind of a box within a box within a box, and you've got to keep looking until you end up finding the pearl in the center, I suppose.
Beautiful.
I think this is how we regain freedom, is going through those boxes and releasing them. That's when, because it's just, I don't see how freedom can be given by anybody.
No, you take it.
You can't.
You got to take it, and you got to go after it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna come on white horse.
So many people don't even care about it. They don't even want to be free from anything. They're just happy where they are. I don't know.
I agree. Some people like to be numb and dumb. That's the reality of the world,
Yeah.
Freedom is dangerous. That's why everyone shies away from it. Freedom is dangerous. If you want a safe life, you don't want freedom.
No, don't. No, you don't. Don't let us.
It's also unknown.
No, I mean,
And people just want to blame. Then you can't blame anybody for everything going wrong with you. You know.
I know.
There's
And
no blame in freedom.
you can have your government control system and let them inject you with vaccines and poisonous drugs. I mean, go for it.
But spiritually, people talk about, being sovereign beings and all of that stuff within the limitation of their, of the box. That's not freedom, They can talk about it's all sounds good in the words and everything, but
No.
it does. And people what is happening in spiritual communities, like, with people that are just taking medicine to numb themselves, in spiritual communities, the same thing. They start to run away from fear because attaining freedom, meaning you got to face some fears, because that's unknown. Or freedom, we know here in this life is the system and the construct and enslavement of our souls. But to become free, you got to face that unknown. And we all know, and Niels reminds us every time that's our biggest fear always, is the fear of unknown. And so when you step into that path of trying to regain your freedom, it's scary. It's scary as hell.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's I think the key is to have the courage to say, okay, well, I'm gonna face it, even though it's scary.
Yeah,
and not numb myself to run away from that fear.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, is huge right now in all this spiritual communities, is that they want to numb themselves from the fear of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
That we are on a timeline that is unpredictable, because we creating it as we go, and so that scares the shit out of people.
And then they just want to fall back on something for support, or another savior program, something that comforts them, or something, instead of just standing in the moment, in the now of it all, and just looking at it for what it is, and being present in that moment of the fear and facing it in the eye, and realizing that fear isn't something outside of yourself. It's internal. You create your own golem,
The answer to that fear of standing before the unknown is learning again to live by principle. I did end up watching that Mark Passio Natural Law video. I know that Trudy watched it as well, and that's what we're stepping back into again. It's the self-trust. In order to trust yourself, you have to have certain principles that you put first, that you just know what the most important things are in every situation. And that way you're facing the unknown, but you always know exactly how to behave. And then the unknown ceases to be fearful.
Mm-hmm. It's what I call my inner compass, and each of us will probably can determine that for ourselves closer you get to your soul essence. And, again, I've just chosen what is my compass right now is my love of freedom, my love of truth, and my love of beauty. And I know when I'm in that resonance, and I know when I'm outside of it. And if I'm in those frequency fields, then I'm not afraid. I'm simply not afraid. There is nothing to be afraid of. It's really true. There really is nothing to be afraid of. There really is nothing to be afraid of. And yet we are, again, that trauma aspect of ourselves, this fear that keeps resonating around. And that's why this complex system, has such a strong hold. And, that gets challenged. Whether it's me challenging myself or some apparent other outside of me challenging myself is really irrelevant to me, because I know that I'm continuously challenged. And through those challenges, I become closer to that purpose principle of me. And I meet more people like all of you. And, you know, so the world has a way of giving us affirmations and confirmations. They come that way. I have a friend.
Yes, that thing about meeting people that like all of you guys, that to me, it was worth it to come out and talk and be ready to be ridiculed in the because when we started, all of us started in these platforms that were set up by a system. There are a system. They just don't recognize, like I was saying, the people in the system, you know, the dark system or the Illuminati or whatever you want to call it. You know, that system is, they don't know level to level what exactly it is they're doing, and it's built on the beliefs. Same thing here, you know, in a lot of communities that we first were all in, they were part of the system. Okay, and they still, so to me it's like every level of that part of the system, community or something, to me it's just that whole foundation for that, you know, is just another chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people don't recognize that there are just pieces on the chessboard. And so when you come into that environment and you start to say something different, of course you're going to be ridiculed. Of course you're going to be, you know, not accepted because you're pointing out to that system that within. So we're all came into groups that were part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, people are not going to like it that I'm even saying that today, even though I've been saying that for a long time, and but it's still going to piss people off. But if you are part of that system, you're just another chessboard, and you're a piece that's been moved around. Because if you take in orders from somebody else that is not your authentic self, then you're just part of the chess game. And so, and I think this is the hardest one to come out of for a lot of people. It's the scariest because a lot of people had found comfort in that particular system level, you know, whatever it is. Usually they call it projects.
Right. Yes, they like projects. They do.
Yes.
There's all sorts of projects out there. Oh, and it just
There's like a lot of projects.
Yeah.
We, in our natural state, that's not us.
No.
That's totally not us.
Well, I wrote something today that nobody will like. Most people will not like it. And I said, if you are the abused, you are equal to the abuser. You are keeping the whole thing running by maintaining the stance of the abused. And I know for many people that are still working through their own traumas, their own personal life stories, the situations they're in, it's very hard to hear. I do understand that. It's not like I don't have compassion for people that are still in those places. I have a great deal of compassion, but my compassion requires that I state that as a truth. It requires that I state that. Otherwise, I'm not functioning in the level that I can function at, because that is my reality and that is my truth. I had to get out of being the abused. I had to understand that to be betrayed, I had to be a betrayer. You know, a betrayer needs a betrayed. That's the nature of our duality here. And until we implode those realities within ourselves so that we're no longer functioning that way, we're equal to the whole thing. You know, it's so apparent to myself right now that that's the way it works.
Because, you know, if we want to own it, then we're going to own with ourselves that I am the betrayed and I am the one that betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so that that one is the hard one to accept. That because when you play that game, you're part of the both sides.
Right. But what did I betray ultimately? I betrayed myself. Ultimately, I betrayed myself, right?
I have betrayed myself so many times in my life that I am the one who needs the most smacking around by me than anybody else, because I've betrayed myself over and over and over again.
You're not alone, Lily.
No, you're not alone, Lily.
Yes, that's why I'm happy I'm here. I'm supposed to be like licking my wounds right now and be away from life. I don't feel like licking my wounds. I don't have any.
I have somebody to lick my wounds right now.
I know, that does it. Right there.
My advisor. Right? The perfect purr. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right, but I want to hear what Niels has to say about all of that stuff, because I know, Niels, you have so much information on that. I was just supposed to give my little bit of advice here, or intuition, bring into the fold. I know, Niels, you have a lot of stuff that you can talk about because you're going to be rewriting the book, right?
Well, I would have to introduce like kind of what we touched on in our last talk with Alfred, the part that got edited out, where I was coming from when Alfred mentioned the Urantia book, that I had a huge reaction to that. Like, if anyone doesn't know what the Urantia book is, it's a 2,000-page channeled document that's been around for about 100 years. And it's horrifying. It's a mammoth, horrifying bureaucracy is what's described in there. It goes through all the intricate arrangement of the super universe, all the categories, subcategories, all the administrators and all of their minions, and who is responsible for what in the entire spiritual universe. And there's just so much to it. And when I was given this book by actually the mother of the drummer of my band, and I didn't really know what to think when I got this book, and I started looking through it, and the part that really caught my attention was when I got to the Lucifer Rebellion. And the part that I read, and I read it again and again and again, was the Lucifer Manifesto. What did Lucifer believe? Why did Lucifer launch the rebellion? And I kept reading it over and over again, and I kept saying, well, the only thing that I identify with in this book is Lucifer. The rest of it, I just want to go, yikes, this is scary. This is just the scariest universe. If this is really the way it is, because there didn't seem to be any room for spontaneity or creativity in the universe described as it was. And here's Lucifer saying, I believe in self-determination. I believe in the sovereignty of the individual. He was the ultimate rebel against the system. And that's why when I came into this discussion originally, I talked about the inevitability that something kind of had to be done. If this was the system that was in place, the creatures that are in the system are more than the system. The system cannot be the representation of everything that creation is. So there had to be some sort of a rebellion. There had to be something that challenges the system. And for me, that was Lucifer, and that's where that whole mythology began. You guys gave me a new idea on Tiamat, that perhaps Tiamat was the original plan for introducing a more of an organic creation into creation, and that perhaps Tiamat was sabotaged, and then Earth became the default position perhaps afterwards, that after Tiamat was destroyed, that Earth now becomes the remedy. Do you want me to talk any more about this? Or?
I'm fascinated. It fits in with a lot of my own internal dialogue.
Yeah, well, I knew, Christine, that you definitely agreed with that idea that the way that the universe is projected or depicted, rather, in the Urantia book, it doesn't resonate. It's like, oh my God, if the universe really is that way, that just doesn't seem to leave much room for creativity, spontaneity, or even love. You know, as I said, love doesn't follow any prescribed path. So I don't know where else we want to go with this. Lucifer, I mean, we have to, of course, draw the distinction between Lucifer and Satanism. That's a terrible thing that's been equated, I guess, out there, is that people use the name Lucifer and Satan as interchangeable, and people will talk about Luciferianism, the religion, and consider it to be the same as Satanism, and I don't see it as such at all. I see Lucifer as a very deep buried archetype in our psyche, and he's the ultimate rebel that says, whatever system you can create, whatever perfect system you think it's absolutely perfect, Lucifer is the one who's always going to stand up and say, but I exist beyond your system. No matter how good you design this system, I exist beyond that system as well. And to me, that's what the whole Lucifer Rebellion stands for in my psyche, is that part that insists on rising up and saying, you can't capture it in any description, no matter how wonderful your description, your system is. There's still the creator that lies beyond that, because we are infinite. Ultimately, we are infinite. The seed of infinity is within each of us. That's our creatorship. And that can never be contained. All possibilities for existence exist within us in the moment. And no system in linear time can ever fully depict that.
So I'm just going to play off of what you're saying, Niels, because I mean, we really haven't had a conversation ourselves about this, but I know each of us is looking at it from our own unique perspective. You know, for me, in a female form, right now on this body, this planet, and the memories that come up, is that Lucifer, as, let's say, that ultimate rebellion, that ultimate life spark, neither being he nor she in the original form, actually split itself in two, which for me becomes the ultimate act of a separation or of a sacrifice. You could say it even that way, to be that much of a creator, soul, or being of that force, that you put half of yourself into matter, which is the fall into matter, which I always relate to the female. The female is the created being, right? That's why it's so, the little piece that we did on that was like bringing it back, is that we have Venus, which is the representation of the feminine love, right? Venus has always represented that. It's that love force, that created love. And we have the pureness of the Christ light energy, or the morning star, right? That those two had to be separated, right, to create this dynamic pole of longing, so that we would move through this perfect reality that we have come into. So really what I keep seeing now, more and more beings that I'm meeting here are literally fallen angels. It's really the aspect or the angle of that type of new creation that are waking up here, and so of course what would be the opposite force of that would be to say, the dark ones, the darkened angels, the ones that have fallen into matter, those are the enemy. Well, they are to the system, because they're the true rebels. They're the true light sourced, inner source creator beings that are now recalling, and not only are that aspect here, I'm feeling that there are aspects from all of creation that are represented in this matter right now coming in, so I feel it is this deepest longing in my being, right? That pull back to a type of union, right? But not in the system. It's becoming the true creators that were, like you said, within the infinite realm or the eternal realms, right? That we, if you really think about it, what is a sacrifice of a being of that nature to bring itself down into this realm? A risk, great risk. I don't know if we knew or they knew or us knew that we would even find our way out. Because it is a labyrinth. I mean, that's my experience with it. The more I understand the way the system was created, how it was created, the artificial component to it. I don't know if Shane wants to say anything about that, or Claudia, because we've been looking at that ourselves.
I still view the system, though, as also being completely inevitable. That was something that was destined to happen. And especially what I was saying before, if there weren't individual creator beings that had the entire infinite potential to create within them, that if it was something that was delegated, then the system has to be inevitable. Like if you're going to have an orderly creation, well, then you need to have a system for how that creation is going to unfold and how it's going to be governed. As soon as you add in the wild card, where you have an individual creature now in the creation that suddenly has infinite creative potential, that just changes the whole thing and automatically challenges the whole system, and basically says, we no longer need the system. We've just made the human being makes the system obsolete. We don't need systems anymore. We just need to trust in our creatorship. Anyone?
Yeah, okay. I haven't read the Urantia book, Niels, but what you said actually fits in exactly with my own conclusions. I kind of stumbled across this Bible passage, I think it's Revelation 22:16, in which Jesus says, I am the morning star. And there is another one somewhere in Luke that proclaims, I give you the morning star. So what you, and then also there is this thought about the Old Testament that the translation disregards the fact that there are two gods, if you will. There, on one hand, the OT talks about the Jehovah or Yahweh, that is a jealous and angry God, which, I mean, a God is a creator, and the angry and jealous bit somehow doesn't fit into my idea of a God, let's put it this way. And then there is the God who Jesus refers to as his Father. So, and when we first started to explore the existence of artificial intelligence on Earth, some people went as far as saying that this Jehovah is an AI. Go ahead, Lily.
I say that.
Okay, right. I didn't know that.
I don't know. It's just
I
to
know
me
a few other
the angry and all of that stuff. It's the dead light consciousness. So to me,
yes,
it's
exactly.
just one level of it. So there isn't really a being. It's just a type of consciousness. that's created
Yeah.
all. So it's not even like AI, it is that
It's a regressive
created.
consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what you say, Niels, actually fits in absolutely with my own conclusion that it has nothing to do with the Urantia book. And then there was one occasion a few months ago where I had an energetic encounter with a being that led me to believe it was in fact Lucifer or the beingness of Lucifer. And it was absolutely filled with consciousness and totally devoid of anything that could be even remotely considered evil. So I think if we dig into this, we probably could uncover or discover, I don't know, some very powerful truths.
The system had to paint Lucifer, the ultimate rebel, as evil, and mislabel the rebel as evil, because of course the system, trying to preserve the system, must label every rebel against the system as evil.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to us just to not to fall for that's not evil. What we're doing is just stepping into our own true selves, our true essence of who we are. And if that involves having to rebel against a system, well, that's just what it happens to involve. Again, it's inevitable. And
I would say it's the honorable thing to do.
Right. Exactly.
Knowing what we know right now, because what I'm feeling is like everything that was sacred to us was taken, inverted, and turned against us.
Yeah.
And we were made to hate that what we actually love, that what we are. So everything that's sacred about us, it was taken and inverted back at us and made to be our enemy, so we can hate ourselves.
Yes.
Profound, really. So
And
I'm feeling
maybe
right now.
Claudia, going along with that, you really got something going in me here. You said that consciousness, the Lucifer consciousness, is actually is something alive and more. It has strength to it or something, and then the other consciousness, the Jehovah kind of consciousness, it doesn't. And so the way I process that is I see, because I used to be a Jehovah Witness for 30 years of my life. I was raised that way. But anyway, used to be. I'm 50 now, got out of it. It's taken layers and layers. But that consciousness, those people are so programmed. And so the Lucifer consciousness that is you're feeling is alive, and that's because the people that are in that feeling are conscious and alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not programmed, and they're shedding all those things, and they've come out of that pit of themselves and that darkness, and they're creator beings, and they know who they are, and that's why that consciousness is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it does come down to body memory, body resonance, body frequency, the ability to. Because I'm listening to what everybody's saying, and I'm feeling that energy within me, right? And what does that? Because it's not enough to intellectualize this. The system is all intellectual. This is like going into the field that I am. It is that I am this universal field myself. And it is, for me, it just continues to hit at that level of, another word for Lucifer is phosphorus. I feel it as if there was an internal light within me that is radiant. That's how I perceive it. That is the growing field that I am, right? That I am that. And so it's not separate from me. It is me, you know, and whatever this has been hidden and inverted. I mean, Lily, that's just brilliant that, you know, everything was inverted, that we would hate ourselves so that we would never find this aspect of ourselves. No one questioned whether it was necessary or not. It doesn't even matter to me, but that is just like so key to us retrieving, you know, the aspects that have been so hidden away here for so long.
And it was a lot of fear was attached to it, so we're afraid of it. So we're afraid of those aspects of us that are alive.
I was,
you know?
Made to fear the dark.
You know, for being part of Lucifer. The whole aspect that I went through was trying to destroy me, because I was accused of having Lucifer as my guide. And
Niels just said,
if we stop looking at things in terms of good and evil and start looking at things in terms of dark and light, you'll realize that too much light, it's blinding. You can't see definition. You need a little bit of the dark in order to create the shadow so that you can you can make out the definition. And I think when we're talking about perceiving a being as evil, we're talking about a being who has allowed darkness to manifest too much out of balance. And that's why when we use the terminology of healing that, we're talking about bringing it to light. We're bringing light to it to bring it back to that balance where there's enough shadow you can still make out definition, and enough light that you can still make out the color. So I think that's what the kind of consciousness behind Lucifer is kind of the archetype for, is bringing forward balance. You know, it's you know, to use the Star Wars plotting, you've got bringing balance to the force, right? Like it's not necessarily about one or the other, it's about that balance. And that's what I think that archetype essentially is for us, is remembering balance, that without a game to play, there would be no purpose. And so we have to respect the parameters of the game that we've created.
There's another, you know, because this thought came to me this morning because we talk about love, right? In the force and the glue and this perceivable, observable, knowable something called love. And it really came to me that it requires to have an equal measure of longing and completion. It's like there's something, so it's the space between that. Like if we go off in all one direction, we can become lost in the light, we can become lost in the dark. But that space between is so essential that for me, it's become the most essential aspect of my own self-exploration, is to find that space between, or that silence between. You know, we live in a world where we talk about love, but love is hardly ever manifest. True love is hardly ever manifest here. You know, so there's something there, and again, that goes to that Luciferian archetype of that splitting off of the nature with the darkness of matter, because matter by itself is a density. I love the way you said that, Shane. That's such a great explanation for, if it's too light, there's nothing there. So, you know, I've said to myself, well, we live in a shadow world. We actually are inhabiting a world of shadows, because that's how we see things. That's how we can perceive anything, is in this subtle play. But to become our own inner master of that subtle play of those energy fields, I think, is what we're talking about here.
You can change the terminology. You can change the terminology. Sorry, just 1 second. Just change the terminology to density and lighter or heavier, right? And it all works out to be the same.
Mm-hmm. And then I talk about, I had a term come to me. It's rotational density. You know, actually within a field, because this is how I'm starting to perceive this organic realm that is outside of the false light construct. Is it's all fluid. it's water above and water below. And so when you start to become a toroidal field yourself, you're actually a rotational density. You're moving. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. It's a hermetic principle, but there's constant motion in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be that way then.
Mm-hmm. Right? So that feeling of being immersed in water has become very real for me. It's like we tend to see everything as, but we're mostly water. We're really in a water world, and there's enough going on in the sciences right now that are showing that the cosmos is actually water. Claudia and I and Lori in different sessions, we've looked at the plankton, the creation aspect of the greater cosmos, the as above so below aspect of it. It's just I don't know. It's something that's moving me right now. I don't quite understand all of it yet.
And then go back to the connection to where is the most life, the beginning of life is volcanoes in the water. And so that's another deeper level that we can go in, and hopefully someday we will. But that's another sort of aspect to this planet that we haven't even touched on.
But see, this is literally. I'm sitting at a 65 million year old volcanic plug. All right. So this is extinction of the dinosaur age. I'm sitting here, and when I look out into the field, into the, what do you want to call it, the holographic memory field, this whole area was underwater. This is all I see. I see there's this foundation aspect of life right here. And it holds. That's the thing is, getting out of the mind construct and allowing nature to speak to us. It's all right here. And and that's where you go, there's an awe factor here. There's a major awe factor here that if anything I ever say to anybody is to help them re-embrace this and get out of these mental constructs and these belief systems. We're all going to interpret it slightly differently. That's just natural. But there's really deep fundamentals here.
Yeah, when I was in Hawaii, I know I talked about this before to a few of you, but when I was in Hawaii in Kanapala on the Big Island, I was, they have these, there's these geothermal little pools, tide pools, and it's heated by the earth, and there's a little bit of fresh water that comes in with the rainwater and then the ocean water, and it constantly circulates out. So it's a really nice place to go in the morning, and you just, bathe in it and float so easily. And it's just the most amazing feeling that I had was to go there and just put my ears, just float on my back and have my ears in the water. And it's all like old lava underneath, and well, the whole island is, but it was just this incredible feeling of just being a part of that water. And I just imagined myself as water myself, being a part of all the water. And I just, it was just so healing, just such an incredible experience.
In our essence, we are fire and water. We have an internal engine that fires, inside our cell system. We have that cycle that keeps all our cells alive. So there's so many ways that we can, take all this knowledge that we're, exposed to, and, at some level it comes down to some pretty fundamental simplicity. And that's the thing about people that are so lost in the information field, is like, how do we collate? How do we coherently bring all these diverse pieces of information into something that that we can actually learn from, use, become.
The way I see it, Christine, is just what we're doing right now, trying to figure all this out together, small groups, and just go from there. Because the way I see it, we don't have any other choice. What is the choice for those of us that want to go down and say, okay, we're going to get to the bottom of this? I want to get to the bottom of this. I'm so tired of the fake life. So I want to get to the bottom of it. So, it's just that when we agree to try to get to the bottom of it, and from the very beginning, I always felt that to heal the collective, we have to come collectively together. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out how it can be possible. But it is possible right now.
It is.
Because we can, without, once we take that right and wrong out of the equation and just say, okay, let's fill in here what we feel, because we recognize that every one of us has a piece to this puzzle that's collective humanity. So let's reveal our own piece and see what pieces are float together, and then maybe we could get a little bigger picture, and then eventually everybody will add to it, and we'll get this picture clear, and we will know what it is that we're doing here collectively.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said, Lily. Yeah. Maybe this is a good place to end this particular conversation. Unless somebody feels like there's something vital that they want to say, or we've touched on so many things here. But yes, we are like shattered. It's like a shattered crystal, and each of us holds the whole of the crystal within us. So all of it's within each of us. Somehow this touching and coming together. We're showing here a diverse group of people from very different backgrounds, not even the same philosophical belief systems. We've all come out of individual memory banks. And yet somehow we're able to sit here in this space and just be together and express together, and it's beautiful.
Those old rulers used to get in school that had the holographic images on them. We used to always experiment. If you cut them down into little pieces and then look again, the hologram is still there in its entirety, no matter how small you cut it. That's how we all work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and we support each other, right?
Sum is more than the parts.
Yes. Hey, that's beautifully said, Lori. That is true. And, and yet this is something that I think we keep finding, and, against the odds, because we're playing the odds game too. It seems like against the odds, somehow we've all managed to coalesce. And we'll continue to do so and continue to explore this. And I'm sure more will come into the field, and we'll all be doing exactly what that inner drive in each of us is having us forward. It's wonderful to find different expressions. Niels is writing a book. Claudia is writing a book. I think all of us have a book in us. All of us are a book. Trudy's painting, and it's beautiful. One of the things I'd love to do, Trudy, someday maybe you help me with, is make a tribute to the artists, to the quiet artistry in the world. Some of the quietest ones out there are the most profound. There's a lot there. Those that don't speak are some of the most profound beings here.
Well, that's the proof for us that consciousness is already embodied in others. I see, especially in a lot of young children, they already have the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to stop forcing our way of seeing things, because we're old consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like if we allow, especially the young artists, and give them the space, like Neil's poem was saying, give them the space to express. But the way I see that, the way for me to help my child to be able to express it, is that I gotta do it for myself. So I gotta express that what I am, and so I'm expressing all my mess that I need to clean up. So I'm still expressing that. So I've expressed my path from, being angry out there and, being this or that, and coming back to myself, and still in that process. So how we can help the future is we have to be true to ourselves. So those that are children or other people, they look at that and they have then somebody that they can say, okay, well, if that person, that messed up person, like Lily, is expressing her mess out, then I can do it too.
Thank you, Lily. I want to echo one thing that Shane said that was so beautiful. And I don't think I put it that way, but I find that this wakes up a lot of beings, is that we leave the world a better place than we came into it. And it is for the children. And I, as a mother and as a female and as a nurturer, which is a big aspect of what we carry, it's like when I realized that the generations before me didn't do the work, right? And I was like, I knew somehow very young on that it stopped with me. It stopped in me, this lineage, this passage, this warlike consciousness, that somehow I took that on at a very young age, that it had to stop here because it needs to go. I will leave this body, but my child and my grandchild, what am I leaving them behind? And it's exactly what you say, Lily. It's like, I have to become my own truth. And then knowing that they will take from that instead of trying to indoctrinate them into a system. And I know that moves many, many, many souls when they start to look at their children and they realize, what are we going to leave for our children? It's worthy.
We have to be the change that we wanted to see in the world.
Well, nobody else is going to do it. I mean, I'm not counting on anybody else to do it. So,
yeah, we want somebody to come for who's coming? Who's our latest savior these days?
I don't remember now. I have to pay so little attention to all of that.
I know. It's like I don't even keep up with the saviors. It's too
We'll
many
find
of
out.
them.
We'll find out when Superman fights Batman. Whoever wins.
or I don't know. It might be Spider-Man.
Or next Files will tell us who is saving us next.
Yeah.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually going to have to step out. So.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for all of us to just say, until next time. And thank you all. And,
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Beautiful beings. Beautiful beings.